Sometimes the villains go nuts, and the result is a complete mind-blowing criminal crash-out. Jafar, Syndrome, King Magnifico, they all lost it. But what if I told you that one villain's crash out resulted in so much damage that even if he lived 1 million lives, he would still owe at least a few $100 million? Well, that's what happens when you can't even spell right. What were the punishments for these villains and their crash out crimes? Let's find out. Gaston was the golden boy of the village. Handsome, strong, and charismatic. The man genuinely thought he was God's gift to women. And because everybody spent years feeding his ego, he slowly developed narcissistic personality disorder. He humiliated people weaker than him for entertainment. He treated Belle less like a human being and more like a prize. And even his own friend LaFoe was just a cheerleader whose entire purpose was stroking Gaston's ego 24/7. But then, Belle rejected him. Gaston isn't exactly the type who can process rejection in a healthy way. In his mind, Belle rejecting him wasn't simply a woman saying no. To Gaston, it was a personal insult and a crime against the natural order of the universe. So, instead of moving on like a normal person, Gaston went full psycho. He conspired with Monsieur Dark, the warden of the local insane asylum, to have Belle's father, Maurice, falsely committed as mentally insane. All because Gaston wanted to blackmail Belle into marriage. Under 18th century French law, Gaston's actions would qualify as unlawful detention, slander, and corruption of a royal official. And considering how brutal pre-revolutionary French justice would be, Gaston would be sent to serve a 5-year sentence as a prisoner in a royal galley, where men were permanently chained to their rowing benches, and they had to work all day. But before that, he would be paraded through the village square in a white shirt, rope around his neck, holding a heavy burning wax torch. He would be forced to fall to his knees and publicly beg forgiveness from God, the king, and Maurice for his crime. And the villagers would probably bring snacks and beers to enjoy the event. Gaston running count, public shaming, plus 5 years of hard labor on royal galley. But Gaston is not done committing crimes just yet. When Belle proved the beast was real, Gaston completely lost whatever sanity he had left. Instead of backing down, he manipulated the villagers and started a violent uprising. They stormed the beast's castle and led a violent attack against its inhabitants. So the charges for incitement of mob violence, unlawful trespassing, destruction of property, and attempted murder would be appropriate. But none of it would matter really, because nobody in France would actually care about some angry mob trying to murder a literal beast. During the final battle, Gaston stabbed Beast in the back from behind. Under the laws of the period, attempted murder with a deadly weapon would have been viewed extremely harshly. But again, the Beast was still a beast, and nobody would see Gaston's attempt to kill the Beast as a bad deed or a crime. So if Gaston survived after the final battle and faced trial, the final punishment would be public shaming and 5 years of hard labor on a royal galley. Because bad men are often rewarded and good beasts are seen as, well, beasts. Gaston final count, public shaming, plus 5 years of hard labor on royal galley. Now, let's talk about the kid who was rejected by the hero he admired. Buddy Pine was an intelligent kid. He idolized superheroes, especially Mr. Incredible. But unlike most fans, Buddy believed he deserved to stand beside his hero. And when Mr. Incredible rejected him and told him to go home, Buddy's villain arc began. He became Syndrome. Hero syndrome is a psychological condition that refers to a person who creates a dangerous situation or crisis just so they can swoop in and resolve it to earn glory. And that's exactly what this guy did. Instead of accepting rejection and moving on, Syndrome spent his entire life executing the world's most expensive revenge plan. He dedicated years of scientific research and weapons development towards proving that superheroes weren't special. He developed illegal military technology, created killer robots, and started hunting down retired superheroes. And this just might be the pettiest crash out in Pixar history. For these crimes alone, Syndrome would be facing terrorism charges, conspiracy to commit murder, unlawful weapons development, and multiple counts of homicide. But we are counting the final crash out crimes only, and those came later, after Mr. Incredible ruined his plan. After the Omnidroid turned against him and his plan collapsed, Syndrome kidnapped Jack-Jack out of pure spite and desperation. He abducted him using rocket boots while threatening the child's family. Under California law, kidnapping a child under 14 can carry a life sentence and it counts as aggravated kidnapping, especially if the crime involves extortion. And in this case, Syndrome wanted to raise Jack to become his sidekick and keep him away from his family forever, which is equally bad. So we can count that as 1 life in prison. Syndrome final, life in prison. Now, let's go to the freezing kingdom of Arendelle. Prince Hans looked like the perfect fairy tale prince. Charming, polite, handsome, well-spoken. But the problem was, Hans probably spent his entire life learning how to manipulate people. Being the youngest of 13 sons meant he grew up invisible, with no chance to inherit the throne. But he was quite ambitious and he looked for other ways to become the king. At first, his plan looked simple. Marry into another royal family and secure power somewhere else. And when Anna instantly fell in love with him, Hans probably thought he had just found the easiest political shortcut in European history. But then Elsa fled the kingdom, and Anna disappeared. The eternal winter hit Arendelle. Once Hans realized Anna genuinely loved somebody else, and his royal fantasy was slipping away, the mask completely came off. First, he seized authority over Arendelle despite having no legitimate claim to the throne.
I charged Queen Elsa of Arendelle with treason and sentence her to death.
Under 19th century Norwegian law, this could qualify as unlawful assumption of royal authority and a conspiracy against the crown. However, since Arendelle was in crisis and Elsa had fled, Hans could probably argue he was acting as temporary regent to stabilize the kingdom. Later, Hans deliberately left Anna to die. After discovering her freezing, he extinguished the fire, locked the doors, and openly admitted that he intended to let her die so he could claim the throne afterward. Under the Norwegian Criminal Code of 1842, intentionally killing with premeditation qualified as murder and was punishable by death. Since Anna survived, Hans would instead face attempted murder, which still carried extremely severe punishment. In 19th century Scandinavian courts would view it as vastly more serious than ordinary violence. Attempting to kill royalty often crossed into treason. During the final confrontation on the fjord, Hans raised a sword against Elsa, intending to murder her in order to eliminate the final obstacle to power. That is another count of attempted murder against a reigning monarch. Under 19th century Norwegian law, attempted regicide and treason against the crown would result in life in prison. Hans' final count, life in prison. Now, let's talk about another psycho incel. And this one wasn't pretty or strong like Gaston, but he was just as entitled. Hal Stewart was a creepy, socially awkward, and lazy guy. He had a crush on Roxanne Ritchie, but he was just too much of a red flag. Hal is the sort of guy you can feel sorry for and sympathetic towards, but as you learn more about him, it quickly becomes apparent that a lot of his misery is purely self-inflicted. And he was pessimistic to the core.
There's no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no Queen of England.
When Megamind decided he was bored and needed a new opponent to have glorious battles with, Hal became Titan. Accidentally. And like Robert Ingersoll said, if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Unfortunately for Bob, people stole that quote and attributed it to Lincoln. But it still remains true. In Hal's case, it didn't go well. He became even more narcissistic and entitled once he got his superpowers, and he just didn't know when it's too much. The first thing he did, he went to impress Roxanne Ritchie. He grabbed her and flew her around Metro City. But that was just the beginning, and things were just getting interesting. Because once he realized Roxanne didn't like him, not even with his new superhero status, he was on the verge of a complete crash out. And what was the last straw? Megamind making fun of him, and showing him that his space dad who gave him the powers was actually Megamind himself the whole time. That was the moment Titan went apeshit. He was a superhero for about an hour and then he had enough of it and became an incel villain. That's what happens when you're lazy, irresponsible, and eat pizza all day without the desire and discipline to do anything worthwhile. Even superpowers can't unloser you. Titan went on a full destructive rampage throughout Metro City. During his fight with Megamind, he smashed through multiple skyscrapers, office buildings, and streets and threw vehicles around like toys, causing widespread collapse across downtown Metro City. Since Titan's destruction endangered countless lives and involved catastrophic citywide damage, prosecutors would likely stack numerous felony charges together. Each major destruction incident could add up to 25 years, depending on injuries caused and scale of destruction. And Titan wasn't just damaging empty buildings. People were running in panic while skyscrapers collapsed around them. Cars were thrown through public areas. Considering the sheer scale of the destruction, prosecutors would probably charge him with dozens of separate counts tied to endangered civilians and murder. And don't forget attempted murder. Titan attacked Megamind multiple times, slammed him through buildings, attempted to crush him, and showed clear intent to end his life. With all these felony counts combined, that's a life sentence without the possibility of parole in Metro City Prison for the criminally gifted. But let's talk about the financial damage. Titan running count, life sentence without the possibility of parole in Metro City Prison for the criminally gifted. Financially, Titan would be beyond ruined. The city would sue him into oblivion. Insurance companies would sue him. Families affected by the destruction would sue him. Businesses destroyed during the rampage would sue him. Even if Titan somehow avoided a life sentence, he would spend multiple lifetimes trying to repay damages that would realistically exceed $40 billion. And he would need a better paying job in order to pay for it. That's for sure. Because no way a cameraman's salary would cover it. Titan final count, life sentence without the possibility of parole in Metro City Prison for the criminally gifted, plus $40 billion in damages. Now, let's talk about King Magnifico, who had an obsessive need for control of his subjects. King Magnifico was worshipped as a generous ruler and magical king of Rosas, a man who granted or denied the deepest wishes of people. The problem was his obsession with control, and that silver quiff on his head. Magnifico didn't just grant wishes, he controlled who deserved happiness and who didn't. The people of Rosas trusted him completely, while Magnifico slowly developed the mindset of a man who believed only he was responsible enough to decide everybody else's future. And when a ruler believes he alone knows what's best for everyone, things usually go downhill very fast. Then Asha questioned his judgment, and that was the beginning of an ego collapse. Magnifico wasn't used to being challenged. Instead of listening to criticism like a rational ruler, he turned towards dark magic in order to maintain power. And from that moment, Magnifico becomes unstable. He started spying on citizens, intimidating innocent people, and abusing his royal authority to silence opposition. Under most medieval laws, this would qualify as unlawful imprisonment and abuse of royal authority. However, because Magnifico himself was the king, this becomes legally complicated. In many medieval monarchies, kings were effectively above normal law, which means ordinary citizens often couldn't prosecute the ruler directly unless nobles, religious authorities, or rival claimants to the throne intervened. After diving deeper into forbidden magic, he began recklessly attacking his own kingdom. He fired destructive magical blasts throughout Rosas, endangered civilians, and unleashed chaos across the city while trying to stop Asha and Star. That's reckless endangerment, abuse of authority, unlawful imprisonment, magical assault, and attempted murder. Under late medieval Spanish laws, a tyrannical ruler accused of abusing sorcery and endangering the kingdom could face deposition, permanent imprisonment, or execution depending on how merciful the new regime felt. And since Magnifico used forbidden magic against his own people, religious authorities would probably get involved too, which makes things much worse, because medieval religious authorities treated dark magic accusations the same way Twitter treats unpopular beliefs. Medieval courts did not play around when it came to accusations involving dark magic, so the final sentence for his Crashout crimes would be death by burning at the stake. Strange, I know, but that's what happens when you're playing around with black magic and you make your subjects hate you. King Magnifico final count, death by burning at the stake. Now, let's go to the desert kingdom of Agrabah. Jafar was the royal vizier of Agrabah, the man who wanted two things: power and Princess Jasmine. He already held one of the highest positions in the kingdom, but for Jafar, that was never enough. Because people like Jafar don't just desire influence, They want absolute control over everybody and everything, and they don't stop until they get it. So when he finally got the genie lamp, that was the worst possible thing that could have happened to Agrabah. The second Jafar gained magical power, every tiny bit of restraint disappeared. He seized the throne, declared himself sultan, and enslaved the kingdom through fear and sorcery. Under medieval Islamic law, violently overthrowing the ruler would qualify as treason and unlawful usurpation of sovereign authority. Jafar also tried to murder Aladdin multiple times using lethal magical force. Under medieval Middle Eastern legal traditions, attempted murder involving sorcery, rebellion, and abuse of political authority would be viewed extremely harshly, especially because Jafar's actions endangered not only individuals, but the stability of the entire kingdom itself. In the end, Jafar committed the ultimate act of arrogance. Consumed by his obsession with power, he wished to become an all-powerful genie, despite being warned about the consequences, which was the perfect ending for somebody like him. If he was put on trial, Jafar would face execution under the laws of his era for treason, attempted murder, unlawful seizure of the throne, magical coercion, and abuse of royal authority. In cases of extreme treason like this, traitors were tied between two boards and slowly sawn in half, usually beginning from the head downward. So that would be Jafar's final punishment: execution by sawing in half. Jafar final count: execution by sawing. Now, these villains were obsessed with power and control. Mother Gothel, on the other hand, just wanted one thing: to be young and beautiful forever. And that's another kind of obsession. Medieval people feared bubonic plague, leprosy, smallpox, wars, and being confused for a witch just because you collect plants or you sing too well. Mother Gothel, on the other hand, spent centuries terrified of one thing: aging. She just wanted to stay young, and once she discovered the magical healing abilities of Rapunzel's hair, Gothel became completely obsessed. She abducted Rapunzel as a baby from the royal family and held her captive for nearly 2 decades. Under the laws of Hesse, in which Tangled is set in, kidnapping a royal child would be considered an extraordinarily severe crime, bordering on treason against the crown. Gothel disguised her obsession as motherhood. She raised Rapunzel in isolation, constantly telling her the outside world was dangerous and that only Mother could protect her. But in reality, Rapunzel was basically a hostage trapped inside a tower for 18 years. Gothel manipulated her, destroyed her self-confidence, and kept her dependent through fear and guilt. When Rapunzel fell in love with Flynn Rider and discovered everything, Gothel revealed her true face and how far she was ready to go. During her Crashout, she stabbed Flynn Rider, which counts as attempted murder. Final charges: child abduction, unlawful imprisonment, and attempted murder. Mother Gothel would certainly face public execution under the laws of her era. Kidnapping the heir to the kingdom alone could justify a death sentence, and then the attempted murder of Flynn would only make things worse. These crimes can count as high treason, and under Hessian laws of the time, she would be executed by beheading. Mother Gothel final count: death by beheading. And finally, let's talk about our number 1 Crashout villain. The one who was promised the title of the Dragon Warrior. But he never got it, because Master Oogway sensed darkness in him. Tai Lung didn't appreciate that, so he had a huge Crashout, during which he tried to destroy the entire village and beat the greatest kung fu warriors of the era. But that's not his final Crashout. That's his original Crashout, because guys like Tai Lung have a few of them during their lifetimes, and they don't stop until the Crashout causes inner destruction. And inner destruction is the opposite of the inner peace which Master Shifu tried to achieve. After his original Crashout, Tai Lung was defeated by Master Oogway, who blocked his chi with pressure points, so Tai Lung was sent to Chorgom prison, where he would remain for the next 20 years. And then he escaped. And in the process, he ruined the reputation of one of the most secure prisons ever created. Then he went back to fight Master Shifu and the Furious Five, and to finally get the Dragon Scroll, which contained the secrets of the Dragon Warrior. But no, that still wasn't the final complete Crashout. The beginning of his Crashout was when he realized that one fat panda who couldn't climb a few stairs was the chosen one. Tai Lung trained his whole life, prepared both mentally and physically to be the chosen one, only to be rejected and replaced by a clumsy panda whose life revolved around noodles. Imagine how Harry Potter would feel if he found out Uncle Vernon was the chosen one. That's what got Tai Lung, and he went ballistic. And the cherry on top of the cake was when he found out that the scroll was blank. So every crime, every fight, 20 years in prison, countless lives lost, all for a blank piece of paper and some sarcastic Taoist philosophy Master Oogway was going for. Instead of realizing the absurdity of the whole situation, Tai Lung became even angrier and tried to kill Po. So that's a death sentence by beheading for the attempted murder. And with the remaining charges like destruction of property, attempted theft of the Dragon Scroll, and attempted murder of Shifu and the Furious Five, that would be heavy bamboo beating before the final death sentence. Plus, court-ordered anger management classes, which he would have to take before he was headed to be beheaded. And yes, they had those in China back then. Confucius promoted cultivating inner stillness and emotional balance to prevent rage, while traditional Chinese medicine treated uncontrolled anger as a physical illness linked to vital energy. Qi. Tai Lung final count, death by beheading, plus heavy bamboo beating, plus anger management. So that was the ultimate punishment of the day, and it would be fun and maybe even calming for Tai Lung. Before the beheading and bamboo parts, of course. What do you think? Whose final crash out was the worst, and why? If you liked this video, check out this one. If all Kung Fu Panda villains were charged for their crimes.